Welcome to the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast, where we learn from real estate professionals across the industry. They will share about how they got into real estate, the big wins they have celebrated, the mistakes they have made along the way, and the advice they have for anyone following in their footsteps. Money really does grow on trees. Hey everybody, William Holland here again. We're having another episode of the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast. I've got a great guest here today named Angel. I'll let her go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about how you got into real estate.
Absolutely. So I'm Angel Williams. My husband and I are in North Texas, but not DFW. So like if you look on the map and you find Dallas Fort Worth, we're like 2 hours to the left and up a little bit, like 20 minutes from the Oklahoma border.
Oh, yeah.
We got into real estate. We bought our first house in 2003 while my husband was finishing up his doctorate at Tech. And it became our first rental in 2007. And so we kind of just we didn't even talk about it really. We just knew that it was going to be a rental. We were moving to Wichita Falls because that's where his job was going to take him. And I actually do not remember us discussing, is this going to be a rental? What do we need to do? We just started looking for somebody to do the make ready. And I mean, that was just how we got started. We both grew up in families that invested in residential real estate. And so it was just a really natural progression for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I actually bought a house last year and I am having 3 roommates as I live in it. So I kind of started off with a rental property, but it's been
That's
good so
awesome.
far.
That house hack is awesome. If we were looking, I say we, Jason's dad and him were looking to find that first house, and they were looking for a residential multi because Jason's dad, that was, 60, 70 units of residential multifamily there in Waco.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
that was Jason's experience. And then my experience was my grandparents had like a quad and a little trailer park and some singles. And so I got that side of it. And so we both came into this I don't know, we just knew this is what we were going to do.
That's
I wish
really
we could
cool.
have house hacked. That would have been really cool too.
Yeah, it's been fun so far. So did you have a job prior to this, or kind of what was your background, I guess, and beforehand?
So I got my BBA with a major in Econ and a minor in music from Baylor in 2000. And then I got
Okay,
my
there we
Master
go.
of Science in economics from Baylor in 2002. And there weren't a lot of jobs out there for economists. So in 2003, I moved to Lubbock and I actually became a teacher at a small private Catholic school for I don't even remember how much I was making a year. I know I was bringing home just under $1,000 until I got into AFLAC. So when you got the AFLAC, the insurance came out before taxes or something weird. I don't know what happened, but it meant that I got to bring home $1,001 a month with a
Hey,
master's degree.
celebration.
Yeah, so I was doing that Monday through Friday, and then Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, I was the lumber counter cashier for Sutherland.
Okay. Wow. So, man, God bless
Yeah.
teachers, right? I mean, thank y'all.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
that was crazy. And then after that, I taught K through 5 music. I actually did an alt cert program to get my teacher certificate that summer and went and taught K through 5 music in La Mesa for a few years.
Okay.
And then my husband defended his dissertation in January of 2006, I believe. And then we spent the next few months with him trying to find a job. And I resigned that January because he was supposed to have a job and it fell through. It was with an ethanol plant. And due to the way the economy was whatever landscape, people quit focusing on ethanol so much. So
Okay.
that job fell through. Wound up getting a job in Wichita Falls, and this is where we came. And I was pregnant when we moved here, so I didn't teach for a while. I subbed some, did some tutoring gigs, and I went back to full-time teaching in 2018, and I was teaching middle school English.
Okay.
So I've been all over the place, and then I've been teaching college econ for Waylon Baptist University for coming in on 20 years. So I've been
That's
teaching for
cool.
them since I was 26. It's wild.
That's
So
pretty cool. So, I guess my last question before we kind of dive into the real estate conversation. So, you study music in college. Do you play an instrument or multiple instruments, or kind of what's your
um
talents there?
I've been playing piano since I was about 4. I actually don't remember not being able to read music. That's kind of wild. I played saxophone in band, I played bells. Um, but I haven't I've got 3 girls and then my son has special needs, but we haven't pushed our girls to play an instrument. Because I had friends that didn't start practicing piano until they were 15 and they were so much better than me. because it was their choice. It was something they wanted to do.
Right.
And it wasn't that I didn't like playing piano. I did, but it wasn't an active decision that I made. So I was decent. I was going to be a piano major for a little bit. But during a jury, I wound up like a half a step off or something, and it had to be memorized. I started crying, and I went and changed my major the next day to business.
Oh no, that's stressful for sure.
Yeah, it was
Um,
hard.
so you've got several kids. Let's just dive right into real estate. So you started out as a passive investor, alongside owning some rent properties and stuff like that. So what's your motivation and why are you in real estate?
So the residential side kind of grew just out of, like I said, that natural progression. We had our son in 2010, and I had a pretty strong feeling that something was off.
Mhm.
And it turned out we got his diagnosis at 19 months. He had a really rare genetic condition. There were 742 cases in the world when we got his diagnosis. I believe they're estimating it's probably more like 1,400 plus now, because what happens is a lot of people get the autism diagnosis and they don't do the additional genetic testing.
Okay.
And so with that diagnosis, he had a lot of medical bills, and we were covering it, we were figuring it out, but it just became clear that we wanted to do more. And we had a trust fund set up for him and the other girls if something happens to me and Jason, or when something happens to me and Jason, and when we're no longer here. And so that's funded. And then we just kind of decided that we wanted to make sure that our daughters never had to worry about his medical bills. They never had to worry about his medical costs. They just needed to love him and make sure that he was cared for with all the love that they had. And in order to accomplish that, we needed something more scalable. And that's really what got us into the multifamily space. Because once we got in the space, then our dreams grew too, because we decided we wanted to have a foundation to help other families who are affected by rare diseases. And to be able to create a foundation like that, I want it to be endowed so that it's self-funded, and to be able to donate like $100,000 a year to the alliance that studies what Anson has. And like, it's a big deal when they get $100,000 a year. That's why it's 100,000, because when all of us get together and we raise for the alliance, it's a big deal when we hit 100,000. I want to do that on my own.
Mhm.
And I want to be able to do that for families. And we want to be able to help other families that are in that situation of, holy, holy crap, this is a really rare disease and nobody can give me any answers. And you're in this whole what if period. And it's so stressful because all you can do is research. There's, knowledge is power, right? So, like, when you get an initial diagnosis, you just get a call that says, hey, we found an extra chromosome, or we found this, we found that. We're suggesting that you go ahead and go on to a geneticist. And that appointment was about 2 weeks out. So for those 2 weeks, all I did was research, and there was nothing good. It's just like everything else. Dr. Google has nothing good to say for you when you give them your symptoms. It's always the worst. Oh, it's cancer. It's
Yeah.
some other, terminal disease. Never
Right.
good. And for 2 weeks, that's all I did. And so we want a foundation that can take that time from diagnosis to seeing the next specialist, and making that time bearable, because it's just hard. And to hopefully take some opportunity there to educate families that this doesn't mean a life of poverty for you, because there's really it's almost two paths. You've got families with special needs individuals that say, hey, we've got to get our kid all of these services. And the only way we're going to do that is to remain in poverty or to even enter poverty. But that's not your only option. You can take it the other way and say, hey, I just crunched those numbers. Trying to get myself in poverty is only going to save me 40,000, 45,000 a year. And I can do so much more than that.
Hmm.
And so you've really got those two divergent paths, right? And our decision was, we're going to blow this thing out of the water, and we are going to create dreams, and we're going to create a foundation. We're going to create just a life for our girls and our son that is immeasurable. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And the way we're going to do that is by just doing amazing things in the multifamily space, because there's that scalability there that you're not going to get anywhere else.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible story. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's so real. It's tough, But I'm glad you're able to just take the gifts that you've been given, and be able to help other people. You have a lot bigger purpose behind doing this. It's not just about, it is, building some wealth and being able to help your kids out. But it's also about helping other people. And I love that. I think that aligns really closely with, my purpose and my goals and all those things as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. So you started out as an LP, a limited partner. You were a passive investor, and we talked about that a little bit. And then you decided that you also wanted to become a general partner, and kind of be closing deals, finding deals, raising capital, and you wanted to touch on closing your first deal. So tell us about your first deal.
All right. So I think there's a lot of people out there in the same boat. You're an LP and you're run out of money. You have no more dollars to invest. Or you have enough to like invest in your own deal. And
Right.
so that's what happens. And it kind of aligned because we were working with another of our coaches, and my husband just kept saying on all the coaching calls, man, I want out of this W-2. I don't feel fulfilled. And for a long time, I didn't get it because I was like, I don't know how you don't feel fulfilled. I got these podcasts going. I got these summits going. My teacher heart is overflowing. I am
Mhm.
so fulfilled. Well, my husband doesn't, this is not his lane. This is not where he wants to be. He likes to underwrite. He literally finds joy in staring at spreadsheets.
Mm.
Like waves of nausea come over me when I'm looking at those, but that's his thing. And so he kept just continually talking about, I want out of this job, I want out of this job. And then the company is moving to Houston and they weren't taking his position with it. And so he had an opportunity to go ahead and finish out his time with that company until they went ahead and made the move to Houston. And he was able to do that and get his like a retention bonus and severance pay. And so it worked out really amazing. And I think everything happens for a reason. And it was hard for him to make it through an additional 6 months when he wanted out so badly. But at the same time, it was a really smart move. And now he's doing consulting for them too. Not a whole bunch, like 20 to 30
Wonderful.
hours a month, but there's still something there, and he's not losing those skills because he does have a PhD in chemical engineering. So I mean,
Okay.
he spent some time in school, right?
Yeah, I studied mechanical engineering, so I'm right there with him on the
But so
numbers and
he does CFD. That was what he did for his company.
okay. Yeah.
So that was it was a really easy move, I think, for him to scoot into basically financial modeling with underwriting because he was already used to how modeling works. Like when it came time to produce our underwriting stuff, he coded it all. It is our baby. It's nobody else's. We didn't buy it from somebody. It's ours. And
Cool.
that's really important when you start thinking about like getting a deal under contract and working through a deal because things are changing and things are changing the entire time you're under contract. And you're going to go through a bazillion loan products. Maybe, maybe not. We did, but we must have gone through 15 of those things. And it was just like, holy night, team one's gone, team two is dissolving. We're stuck on the line for, at that point it was 100,000 that had gone hard day one. We were about to pay another 75 for an extension. Then we had to pay another 10 because we were about to fall out and we needed to get this thing closed. So, we're 185 down, 185,000, and it's us. We put together a third team. We started making phone calls. A friend stepped up and basically dropped what he was doing that day and helped us find a loan product that would work. And once we got approved with that company, it was 28 days to close.
Awesome.
And it was talk about a roller coaster. It was insane. And I think that that's one of the beauties of really coming into this space as an LP because you get to meet people and you get to learn about people and learn who's doing solid stuff, who's doing questionable stuff, um, who's been successful because we've been in a golden era for like 15 years, and
Right.
who's going to be struggling in the next 3 to 5 years. Like you get to really be a part of it. And when you come in as a passive, you can ask that GP team, the sponsoring team, you say, hey, can I be a fly on the wall? Can I watch what you're doing? Can I learn from you? And some of them will say no, but some of them will absolutely let you in to see kind of those inner workings so that when you go to the GP side or if you choose to
Right.
push over onto the active side, you're not coming in blind. you've got some idea of the things that need to be happening. And so that was one of the things that helped us a lot, um, especially when it came to the capital raise part, because with all the changes in our GP team, we wound up with a third team, and then we didn't do agency, we did bridge. It seemed insane at the time. Now we look back on it, we're like 5.99. That's pretty freaking amazing.
Mhm.
And so it worked out really well. And we got an opportunity to basically be in the driver's seat on our own first deal. And it's been insane. We have learned so much. It was like we hadn't learned anything before. And we'd been in like a coaching program for several years. We'd been LPs. We were seeing all this stuff going on. We were so educated. And when you're in the deal, it's like all that stuff just flies out the window. And it's the relationships that you've established that help you get through it. Because when team two was no more, we were on the line again. It was a $5 million purchase, and it was me and my husband, who had, by the way, never done a deal before.
Mhm.
And he came home from work one day, and we put together a list of 35 people and just started calling. I thought we'd be done in the first 5. Nope. Thought we'd find somebody to help us in the first 10. Nope. First 15, 15 didn't answer. It was called 16. And it was Agostino Pintus. And I will never, ever, ever forget that he helped us find a loan product and got us back on track. And then that third team that we put together with Frank Pedalano and Gail McCarthy and Mike Cordray, like that was the team that got it across the finish line.
Mhm.
But it's a whole different level of grit and persistence. Like I thought spending all day on the phone with insurance companies to make sure my son was getting stuff covered, I thought that was tough. And getting that first deal across the 0 to 1, by far the hardest thing I had done in real estate. And I mean, I've done some hard things, and that was by far the hardest thing.
I love to travel to other countries, and it's one thing to be able to research the country, and I can tell you the geography, I can tell you the hot spots to go visit, but it's another thing to actually go see that country for myself. And I think that's what you described right there, in the passive investing versus actually doing the deal. It's a lot different.
Yeah. I mean, you learn things like how do you want to be communicated with? Like I can tell you like who's my favorite communicator out there out of the deals we've been in. I can tell you whose communication style I really dislike and
Mhm.
that I didn't want to copy. And then we get in our own deal and you're like, oh, I'm going to be a great communicator. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you're so spaced out on all the things going on. You're like, dang it, I forgot to let everybody know what's going on. And so it's like, I find myself apologizing because I'm just like, I'm so sorry. But it'll get better over time. It'll get better with each deal we do. And just to let people know like what your plans are. I want to be a better communicator. I want to be a great communicator. I want to make sure that you're getting documents that help you see what's going on in the property. And those are my dreams. And sometimes I don't get all the details to get the dream to reality. It's like partially there, it's kind of half baked, kind of like a flat cake, really dense. But I mean, something gets out there. It's not to where I want it to be yet.
Definitely, for
Um,
sure. So another topic that you talked about was finding your superpowers. So finding your gifts, your skill set that really complements you and your passions. How do you do that?
so we got kind of fortunate. Our coach had us send out 2 questions it's supposed to be 5 people. He's like, email 5 friends with these 2 questions and tell me what they say. And
Okay.
it was, what is this person's natural talent? What does this person do better than anybody else? And I was like, 5 people. I'm not going to get 5 responses if I email it to 5 people. So I emailed 10. I got 7 responses, and
That's
they
pretty good.
all basically said the same thing, that Angel will talk to anybody. She'll build an instant friendship. And half the time she has that person doing something for her by the end of the day. And I was like, what? That's insane.
Uh-oh.
Like, that's not a talent. I just assumed that the reason why Jason couldn't do it is because he's like an engineer. He's like a doctor engineer. And so I just assumed that it was a like an occupational thing. And I didn't understand that no, that was my superpower. And his superpower was 100% in that underwriting space. And once we realized that those were our gifts, we made the decision to not work on weaknesses, because every minute I spend working on a weakness, number one, is only going to make me mediocre, but it's a minute that is being taken away from me continuing to make my superpower even more superpowery. And so
Exactly.
that was just our decision. We just decided to really focus on the superpowers and find people to put on our team or to partner with that could really see why all the other stuff.
I love that. Yeah, there's, several books that float around these circles. The 4 Hour Work Week, Who Not How. And one of the coolest like things that I've gotten from those books is like, hey, they're, my weaknesses, somebody actually, that's their biggest strength and that's their biggest passion. And so if I go ahead and leverage that and utilize other people's talents and gifts and passions, it's a win-win for both of us. Like I get a better product. It gives me more time back,
Yeah.
and we're both doing what we love.
Yeah. And man, if you've got any doubts about what you think you can do, like I thought, you know what, asset management, I'll be able to do that. I think at a high level, yeah, I'm okay with that. But there's a project manager, Mike, our friend, is a PMP. So he's a project manager, management professional. So he's got the training.
Mhm.
And I remember the conversation we had. He called, he's like, I don't know what I'm adding to the team. Do y'all still want me to be here? I'm like, well, you're a signer on the loan. You don't get to leave. Um, but I was like, wait a second. You're a PMP. Asset management is a project. Because at that point in time, I felt like almost compelled or responsible for running the asset management meetings. It was horrendous. I hated it. I don't, it was like I was back in the classroom and I was getting on to a student and everybody else is averting their eyes. Like that is seriously what it felt like. And I hate that feeling.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when Mike took on those meetings, it was like the weight of the world was lifted from my shoulders. It was amazing. And so I realized, oh, maybe this really is not my lane. But now I'm really good with the relationships piece of it. So like I can talk to our regional, I can talk to our on-site, but that was where I learned the other kind of flip of this. We had a unit that needed to be cleaned out. We've got a lot of residential contacts because we've been investing residentially here for 15 years and our complex is 15 minutes from our house. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to find somebody to do the trash out on that unit. So I texted a few of my residential friends. I was like, who do you have that could do this? And so they gave me some names. I did some calling around. I got some estimates and settled on a guy that was going to do it. And so I'm on site, I don't even know, 3, 4, 5 days in a row. And it was hard. I was getting these texts. I was like, in the whole way that he got paid, like, because at this point in time, the property management company was dissolving too. And so we're looking for a new property management company. And I'm trying to take care of this, trash out. And his first check was fine. But upon the trash out, he was like, these things I thought I was going to be able to resell. Turns out there's mice in the unit and they pretty much ate through everything. And so he's like, I would like to negotiate. Can I get $200 extra? And I was like, you know what, let me talk to the team, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. So they overnight another check. They misspelled his name. So he goes, and of course, he doesn't have a brick and mortar bank. It's an online bank. So he
Right.
goes to deposit the next check and they're like, wait a second. Why is this misspelled? So they wouldn't let him deposit it. So they get another check overnighted. So this is like on a Friday. Well, like I said, the property management company was dissolving. So that check that he received on Friday, they had already closed the account. So he goes to deposit that check. It's to a closed account. Now his bank freezes his account because it
Oh
looks like he's
wow.
trying to pass fraudulent checks. So all that mess going on. I got to meet this guy on a Friday night at Sonic at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. to give him those $200 out of my safe because I'm like, we're done. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. Here's your $200. He's writing me a handwritten receipt. And it was just like the drama of making sure he's getting paid and then a check that's fine, a check that's misspelled, a check that bounces. And then just finding out that he's like texting people that are on site, like, where's my money? I need my money. And I'm just like, oh, and like, I have a whole different level of respect for our property manager and for our regional because I quickly learned that I do not want to be a property manager. Like man, I don't want to be a property manager at all. That was that was like a crash course. And it was just a quick reminder to me that this isn't, you tried it out. This isn't your lane. What is your lane? Relationships. Quit trying to do stuff that is not your lane. But I
Right.
wouldn't have known if I hadn't tried it.
Exactly.
So,
Love that.
yeah, it was a good learning experience.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the best learning experiences are the hardest things that happen, but we grow the most through them.
Oh, yeah,
So
that was 2 weeks of a big, big learning experience with no cell phone access or internet access to like my rock, my other team member there. And it was a hard, hard, hard 14 days.
yeah, sounds like it. Passive investors in real estate are able to receive a check every month. Some people call that mailbox money. We say money really does grow on trees. Visit the website at biggerpictureholdings.com, where we have a ton of free resources to help you learn more about planting your very own money tree. Well, in closing, I'd love to hear some of the big wins that you've celebrated with real estate. I know you've got a summit coming up. You've been doing that for several years. That's so awesome. You've got a lot of great guests there. And then, in addition to that, you have some losses as well. I think we've touched on that. I mean, that might have been the biggest loss, but I'd love to just hear any other losses that you've had.
So most of our passive investments have been really good. We did kind of get, I don't just invest in a deal because the team looks amazing on social media. Take the steps to talk to people that have done deals with them, that know more about the inner workings of their deals, because we wound up in a deal that was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a 2x plus. It wound up being a 1.1. It was very, very sad. And like we got into it in November of 2019 and did not get a single distribution. And I know that that was COVID era, but there were things in the business plan that could have been adjusted and they weren't. But when you see this particular sponsorship team on the internet, they look amazing. They look like they are stellar. They're doing deals everywhere. And maybe we were the one loss. I don't know. But it left a really bad taste in my mouth, and we will never invest with that team again. Whether or not they've learned and they've become successful, it doesn't matter, because the way that deal was handled was just not good. And it changed how my husband and I vet sponsorship teams and the questions we ask and who we ask them of. So just, my advice there is just don't just take into consideration how somebody looks on social media. And I know that seems really obvious. You're like, oh yeah, I would never do that. But subconsciously you do. So really take the time and call around and get some testimonials. Talk to their investors. Find out if those investors are reinvesting with them. And I know for me, it was like, I didn't want to seem ignorant. I didn't want to make those phone calls and look inexperienced, right? So in your effort to not look inexperienced, you wind up looking inexperienced. We got real lucky with some passive investing deals that turned out amazing. And that particular one wasn't amazing. So it was a really stellar learning experience for us. And I hope that it's a really stellar learning experience for your listeners, because social media can be really manipulative. And you can see somebody that looks like they're doing 20 deals and being successful in 20 deals, and that's not always the reality. It's really easy to make a picture look good and make a smile look genuine, but you have to be able to see what's going on in those deals and be able to talk to people that have invested and continue to invest, or find out if they're having to reinvent the wheel every single time around. Because if they're having to reinvent that wheel and get new investors every single time, I mean, eventually word's going to get out. So just do your research. You don't seem inexperienced. You don't seem weak or ignorant or anything else. It makes you seem really, really smart, because you're taking the steps that experienced investors are taking to vet teams. So don't forget that part.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for joining us today and imparting some of your wisdom and some of your passions and the stories. It was just great to get to know you a little bit better. I'm really excited for your summit coming up, and just wish you the best there.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun, and I mean, this is my lane. This is what I love to do, and I'm just glad that you're hosting this podcast and that I was able to be a part of it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe below. A new episode will air every Tuesday at 7 a.m. Are you looking for more content? Visit our website, biggerpictureholdings.com. And remember, money really does grow on trees.